Okay, hello. Welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. I'm your host, Levi Lupu, and sorry for the delay in releasing this episode. It's been a very busy week, quite eventful, and then there was the Passover over the weekend, and that combined with a lot of work before and after. I had my last exam at university before the Easter break, and yeah, and then after that it was kind of work, and then on Saturday I just, besides of going to the synagogue and then in the evening going to the Passover Seder, I've just slept too tired. And then on Saturday, Sunday, I've been working, and then I'm recording this is Monday night. Well, actually, it's past midnight, so it's Monday night or like Tuesday morning, and I've just got home after working on my day job, and also doing a show in the evening. This was the last chance to try some new material before the so yeah, the last chance to do some testing for material before the work in progress that I've got on Wednesday, the 16th of April. And look, for anyone who hasn't bought tickets yet, make sure you do, because we still got a few left, and we would appreciate the support, because we got big plans with the show. Now, yeah, it's quite eventful, quite stressful week, and I've had a couple of reviews with my psychiatrist a couple of weeks ago on the medication, and then I've also had a pretty good session with my therapist on um, Friday. We talked a lot about. I guess it was a lot of, like, the radical acceptance, um, and it was, it was a lot, because I feel like, again, it's almost it's been months. Like, we are already in April, so it's been 4 months this year, which have been quite difficult. Um, my old day job has been quite intense in the last few months, and I still can't. Well, until next week, I can't talk about it, and then I'll be able to share a lot more information. And yeah, that I'm looking forward to that. But basically, because of the perhaps the situation that I've been put in, or like the situation that I've been in this year, um, I can see the good times ahead, and I can see um, the moment and even the date that I will be able to feel more stable. It's 20th of April, but until then, it's quite hard. It was quite hard for me in the last couple of weeks, just to kind of just to be able to, you know. Deal with this and not feel like I'm just losing all the energy. And I'm kind of like, as although, again, as I can see the end date, but still I'm perhaps just too tired to even, you know what's going to happen next, know what I'm about to do. And I was speaking with my therapist about it, and she's been quite helpful to just help me, or like to just remind me, I guess, what skills to use. And again, radical acceptance was probably the biggest one. Um, Emotional, like, regulation wasn't necessarily a thing that I've worried about in the last couple of months. I feel like I've been doing that pretty well, although I actually picked up a bit of an injury on the side, like near my rib cage. I think I pulled a muscle, and it was quite frustrating, because I feel like, um, dealing with all the stress in the last few months, the gym was actually quite a big, a great outlet for me. And now not being able to train for over a week almost, um, feels a bit annoying, and it does feel like a setback, and it does perhaps make me, well, perhaps it does make me feel sad. And I almost it makes me not realize all the progress that I've done in the last few months. Like health wise, I'm talking physical health wise. Um, Especially because I signed up for a great gym nearby. I had like a student deal on, and I'm super excited. It's such a great gym. I've been able to use the sauna there as well, and I love sauna. And what else? Oh well, before I introduce you to this week's guest, who I'm super excited about, by the way, um, speaking with Mike has been such a pleasure. You know, comedian with a lot of experience. Also, he's had an interesting life, and he's got such an interesting story to share. And we talked a lot about like mental health, comedy, and about his books. He's a great writer. I've ordered a couple of his books, and then I've ordered one of his books, and I've got a couple on my wish list. So yeah, no, it's been such an um, pleasure and a privilege to have him speak with me. We had to record remote because he's based in America, and I'm not. But yeah, before I get there, what's one last point I want to share? Oh yeah, which was that. I've been listening to the audiobook, like Douglas Murray's most recent audiobook, and I'm about a chapter and a half in, and it was I've listened to some of the most heartbreaking stuff I've ever heard. Like I knew what I signed up for, and I actually knew that what I've been. I've known a lot of the things that have been going on, like October 7th, um, but I didn't know as much and to as much detail as I know now, and it's been quite heartbreaking, and it's been quite sad, and I think I've been thinking a lot about the people, the connections that I've cut in the last few years, months, weeks, and I think this kind of gave me the reassurance that I'm doing the right thing. I can't be around people. Um, they have the right to believe in whatever they want to believe in. That's absolutely fine. They can say whatever they want, but I also have the right to protect myself, and I don't need this sort of people in my life. And yeah, with all this like sadness going on, given like how can people not have seen the atrocities that have happened, and yet question them, and then question the validity of that, and question whether that was enough, or whether it's um, good, or was it acceptable, or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, look, I it almost helped me reassure myself that I'm doing the right thing. But anyway, that was just a little note that I wanted to add. And yeah, look, guys, it's when guys, folks, people, um, it's been a very busy week before this one, and then I've got a although there is Easter this weekend, and there is no comedy shows, but I still got a day job. I have a break from uni, which is great, and the exams have been over. With the exams being over, I'm kind of looking forward to having a couple of extra days off a week in the week. But yeah, I'll catch you next week, and thank you so much for listening, and look after yourself. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll catch you. Actually, I just realized now you will hear back from me before we wrap it up for this week. But yeah, enjoy my conversation with Mike. Thank you. Okay, so Mike, how's it going?
It's going great. I appreciate you having me on the show.
No, thank you for taking the time, and Just for context for everyone listening, we're recording from two very distant locations. I'm in London. You're in
I'm in
Texas?
Dallas, Texas. Yes, yes.
Nice.
I'm in the Americas and the Central Time Zone. So we are far apart. We are an ocean apart, Levy.
That's true. And Ocean in a little bit as well, because like Dallas is even more like west.
Yeah, you gotta account for like New Orleans. You gotta account for some of the Carolinas, and then by that time you get to the Atlantic Ocean, and you're on your way. You're well on your way for a
And
long swim.
I get tired. Like I
I get
usually
tired. Halfway, I get tired. I just turn back.
no, I sometimes I feel like if I were to, I remember when I first took an airplane, and it's kind of like, hey, if this like plane crashes and I fall into the ocean, as if in my head it sounds like I would still be alive while falling in the ocean.
Yeah,
I'd be
yeah.
like, yeah,
Well,
I'll
yeah.
probably.
You have that fantasy of surviving on an island somewhere, you know.
But even then, I don't think I would make it to the island. I'll just give up on
Yeah,
the
you've
way.
given up hope. You just be floating for a little while, and then you'll be
Yeah.
shark food.
Well, that's the thing. Unless like someone grabs me and is like, "Hey, don't worry, I'll swim for the both of us." No chance.
No chance. When I went across the pond, I really tried not to think about it because I'm claustrophobic and I'm
Oh
fearful.
man,
And also, we were on was it Swiss Air? I think so. We had free alcohol. So I was
no
going with
way.
we were going to Vienna, and so we were going with the Second City, which is a theater here in America, where a lot of the people from Saturday Night Live come from. It's a
Oh,
theater out of
interesting.
Chicago. Yeah. And so I was touring with Second City and a part of a group that was going to Vienna to perform for an English speaking theater there.
And then are you from? So let's go from the very beginning. Are you from Dallas?
I'm not. I'm living here because my wife grew up here and we're living in the house that she grew up in. And
Oh, no
so,
way.
yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, which is north of here. And then I moved to the Dayton, Ohio, which is where I went to college for computers and information systems. And then I went to Orlando, Florida, where I lived for 2 years to become an actor for Disney MGM Studios and Universal Studios. And then I became a comedian at night during that time. So then I quit that job and those jobs, and I moved on the road, and I moved back to Cleveland for a little bit. And then I moved to Chicago, and that's where I stayed for quite a while. And that's where I got into Second City. That's where I got an Improv Olympic. That's where I got a TV show on A&E called The Straight Dope, where we answered really like sort of inane questions, and we kind of did it sarcastically. And then I moved to New York. I moved to Brooklyn, New York for a year, and I didn't like it there. I wasn't comfortable with the energy of New York. It's very fast paced, and it's very like, hey, what you do? It had a lot of that, and I was like, whoa, too much. And so I moved to LA. I moved to Los Angeles, and that's where I found my footing. And I did some TV out there. I was on the Tonight Show a couple times. I was on the Conan O'Brien show a couple times. And then my future wife, and I got a radio show of CBS Radio, and we were both on the air for a couple years doing Cracking Up with Gretchen and the Lukes, where we took weird news stories, and we took our friends who were improvisers and actors in LA, and we had them play the parts of these weird news stories. So it's like there was a guy collecting squirrels in New Jersey. We'd have one of our friends pretend like he was that guy, and we'd interview him. And so it was all a farce, And so it was really funny, and we had a good following. And then the whole FM Talk network went down. That's when the big crash came in 2008. And so it was affected, and they stopped investing money in FM Talk. And that's when Adam Carolla lost his job. That's when Tom Likas lost his job. All these big FM Talk radio stars had to find a new place to play. And we were one of that group that fell to the wayside during that. And that's when we began having babies. And so, Levy, that once I started having babies, I quit doing the road work, and I started writing. And that's when I wrote my books. And we went from Cleveland from LA back to Cleveland, and we lived there. And then we moved down to Dallas. And so that's the whole Mike Lukas tour of how it happened and how I got to where I'm at right now. And now I'm back on the stage and doing stand up again and doing improv and loving it.
That's amazing. And then, well, look, one first question I want to ask you: when you left, home, Cleveland, for Florida, did you know did you know that that's what you want to do? Like you want to be, because you said at the time you're an actor, right? You're or
Yeah.
like you were trying. Is that why you left, or did you kind of like leave for a different reason and then you got into acting?
No, I left. Well, it was funny when I was in Cincinnati. I was working at AT&T doing computer programs, and I did that for 2 years, working for the corporate man. They call it the golden handcuffs. You know, it's a
Yes.
comfortable living, but you can't get out of it. You know, and so I was there for 2 years. And during that time, I was taking an acting class because I was interested in acting and being funny. I did a couple of stand-up comedy sets, but I was so nervous doing it. I didn't want to keep doing it. I chickened out after doing it twice. And I took this acting class. And then my mother was living in Cleveland at the time. And she said, "Hey, Disney is looking for comedic actors, and it's right up your alley. Why don't you, for their new theme park, it's opening up, MGM Studios." So I was like, okay. So I drove up from Cincinnati up to Cleveland. I called in sick. This is before caller ID and before they could trace where you're calling from. So I called in sick and I auditioned for this thing in Cleveland. And they were looking for a 1 minute comedy monologue that you had to do. And so my acting teacher and I were like, well, what happens in a minute? Like, what could I do? Like, they would take a minute. So I concocted this piece where I was in an elevator, and it was a luxury elevator ride up to the top of the terminal tower where they had a real luxury restaurant. And I said, well, I'll be the entertainment for the elevator ride up to the thing, and it's only a minute. So I played this old guy who was the control panel engineer, and I played this old guy who was like, "I'll take you up to the," and we called it the luxurvator. And I said, so I said, step in, fasten your seatbelts, and get ready for the ride of your life. And then I would hit the button, and then I pulled a microphone out of my back pocket, and I spun around, and I started to become a lounge singer who was entertaining these people. So I was singing songs like "When We Get Behind Closed Doors," like elevator related music. But then, but within like the second song, I had to stop because the elevator ride was over, and I was like, "Well, that's the ride. Thanks for coming." And that was the whole monologue I did, and they loved it. Oh, it killed. And so they called me back, and they Disney MGM wanted me on their opening cast. And so I did Superstar Television, where I had to grab people from the audience and put them in this fake television show that we did. It was a 3-camera shoot, and they got to be in a soap opera, or they got to be a guest on the Tonight Show, and it was all fake, but it was all green screen stuff, and it was all really well done. And I got to play the host for it was the fake handprint ceremony. You know how they do that in front of the Grauman's Chinese Theater
Yes.
in America? They have a Hollywood ceremony where they celebrate the stars with the handprint ceremony. So we did a fake one at Disney MGM Studios, and then I would interview these B celebrities that would come in, like old football players like Lyle Alzado, and who else was there? Suzanne Plachette was there. Like just B actors that they'd pay them $10,000 to do this ceremony for them, and then they would get to see the park, and then we would interview them as if they were celebrities. So it was fun, man. So that was my first job. So I was doing that during the day, and then that gave me the confidence to be a comedian because I was working on a microphone every day, and I was making people laugh, and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't so hard. So then I started doing a workshop with a woman there who was helping people who were trying to become comics. And so that workshop ended up being a real breakthrough for me, because then I ended up getting work, and I started working around Florida. And so that's when I became a stand-up comic. And so the acting was always in the background, and the stand-up comedy and the improv was always in the foreground.
And then how did you get into radio? Like, what again was that?
Yeah, that was accidental, man. That was because my future wife was into it, and she was doing a show. She was it was a live feed from Los Angeles to San Francisco, the sister station that we were in. And so she was doing a 2-hour show where she was just talking herself. And she was like, well, would you come in and just sit in the studio with me while I'm doing this? So there's at least somebody that I'm talking to, even though you won't be on the microphone. So then I just sat in there with her a couple of times. And then I started mouthing off and talking. And then so they gave me a microphone. And then that's sort of how I kind of got involved in that. And then we pitched a show to the producer there. And then he liked the idea. So then we got our own spot. So that's how that came about.
Huh.
Yeah, it was kind of a miraculous entryway into the radio world, especially because it was CBS radio, so it was a big radio station.
Yeah, well, no, that's the thing, because that's like a national. Although, again, bear in mind,
it's in LA though. Our show just was in LA. They didn't put ours anywhere else.
No, but I meant because in like again, my understanding of the CBS is like a national network,
sure.
or like is a national thing. Because I grew up, because I grew up in Romania, and we have this like. I want to say I really enjoy it, and I absolutely love this like love for America. You know, even without being, because it's kind of like everything that's cool, it's from America.
Right.
So like
Did you guys watch a lot of American TV shows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing actually when I because you were talking about like when you went to Vienna, which actually I wanted to ask you because you also mentioned being like claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Was that something that you've struggled with ever since you were young, or is it like a new thing? And if it's not, how did you? Because obviously, like again, you're traveling a lot as a comic, and even as like a human being, you've moved around the country a lot. You've been overseas as well. Yeah, like what's it like to be claustrophobic, but also having to, or like doing something that takes you around, so many places?
Well, it's one of the reasons I drank so much for a long time.
Uh,
Right. That was one of the ways I don't drink anymore, but I loved to drink because it would calm those nerves. I had also had social anxiety. So imagine that you're claustrophobic and you have social anxiety. So you become a comedian.
Comedian.
What an
Nice.
idiot. But I was battling it the whole time, but it gave me an edge in how I was working with people. And I really love people. I love working with people and making them laugh. And so it was a good trade-off, even though the nerves were there. And the nerves were never there when I was on stage. It was always beforehand and always, in between while I'm traveling and that. And then you start to, like, I got into Buddhism, so that helped me with chanting, and I had a different way to channel my energy so that I wasn't spiraling downward. Instead, I was spiraling upward. And I had to figure out like what it was that I was wanting to do, and was it worth doing and putting up with this other stuff. And then breathing has a lot to do with that, deep breathing and focusing on the moment. That's the problem that a lot of us do when we're claustrophobic or we're socially anxious, is we're thinking about the past and we're thinking about the future. So a lot of the exercises that you do to help you with these sort of symptoms is you ground yourself into the present moment and get curious, right? Like ask questions and take it off of yourself and put it onto the world.
How did you? Because I've been diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder, and I'm also 2 years sober. Well, no, over 2 years of like
Oh, good for
alcohol.
you. Yeah.
And thank you. So how did that, like, did you stop drinking and got into like Buddhism straight after, or was it like because you became more interested about Buddhism and then you were like, oh, okay, maybe this drinking thing is not that good, or I don't know what was but then what was it like, two unrelated things that happened uh, a long period, one after the other?
Well, I started studying Buddhism in 2002, and I've been drinking up until probably 2018. So
Okay.
I was a Buddhist when I was drinking and partying and everything. But part of the journey of Buddhism is you're on a self-discovery. And so part of what I began to realize was that the alcohol wasn't doing for me what it used to do for me. And the negative parts of the alcohol were bigger than the positive aspects of it. And so because I began to see the truth of it, I just didn't crave it anymore. I didn't use it as a solution to my problem. It didn't solve the problem I originally cast it to solve. So I had no use for it anymore. So I gave up that way. It wasn't like I went to AA. I wasn't like I went to
Mm.
meetings. I didn't do anything like that. I just no longer had use for it. And then the negative, because it would put me in a real negative spiral. And that was really tough to get out of. And so, yeah, that I was telling you a little bit about this book I did, the My F and Joy strategy. Part of this joy strategy is figuring out when your not joy moments are outweighing your joyful moments. And when that equation gets unbalanced, you need to really address the fact that your present moments aren't joyful, and figure out why that, what the sources of that are. And so there's a real strategy involved there can be a strategy involved in prioritizing joy. We don't prioritize joy. We act like joy is this extra thing you get maybe once in a while if you're lucky. And that's not true. With Buddhism, what they teach this thing myoho, which is cause and effect. The causes that you do, the choices that you make, create an effect. And it could be down the line, it could be right away, it could be years from now. But all these choices that you make cause an effect later. And if you don't like the way your life is going, if your life is not joyful, you have to examine the causes that you made in order to get these effects that you're now feeling. And then all you have to do is shift those causes. And if you shift those causes, you're creating a future that has better effects. And so there's a real strategy to that the book goes into. Then it makes it real simple and fun and easy and silly to go through, because it can get complicated if you start to talk about these Buddhistic terms. It can get a little bit heady. But I love it, man. I've been studying that, and it's brought me a lot of peace. And it's frustrating though, because there's a lot of not joyful moments in life. And so when you're a Buddhist, you feel like responsible for not giving in to these not joyful moments, but we're human. And so I still get angry. I still get frustrated. I still get jealous. I still get all these things that bring me not joy. And I catch myself in the moment of those. And I'm just like, oh, see, this is you're about to make a cause. It's going to create this effect that you're not going to be happy with. So there's a real strategy to the process if you allow it.
But then this is again, it's interesting. I'm curious about one. How did you then is the reason why you decided to write the book because you thought, oh, again, it sounds. I want to make something that sounds quite like, say, hard, or it sounds very, I don't know, like big words, or like words that are like very powerful, not powerful, but
Sure.
hard to understand are being used. And then you were like, hey, I just want a simplified version of this. I just want to, for
Yes.
everyone to just kind of go like, I get it. That's what I have to do. Or like, that's how it works.
I had a real calling to do that, Levy. Yeah, that's exactly right. What I said was there are other books that focus on joy. There are other books that focus um, on this Buddhistic approach to cause and effect and things like that. But they're all really geared towards people who study Buddhism and who are really into it, this is for people who are curious about it but have never really got into it. So it's a real basic and beginner's approach to these concepts. But I thought if I do this book, I have to add a comic angle to it, because that's my contribution to this message, because this message has been given by other people. It's not an uncommon message, which is, prioritize joy in your life. That's not an uncommon message. I didn't invent that, but it's the tactics needed to make that true, to make it for yourself. I sort of took from a bunch of different places and threw them all in this stew of a book. And I had, and honestly, I identify on the Asperger's spectrum. And so we like to give unsolicited advice to people. And so this is a book of unsolicited advice to anyone who wants to feel joyful. And you can read it if you want, but I had to write it. I had it in me that I was like, I need to get this message out. It's an important message. And it's one that it's free. That the book isn't free, but the message is free to everybody. And when you understand the concepts of this law of cause and effect, you can make it work to your advantage. And when you can make it work to your advantage, you can have this life that's filled with a lot more moments of joy. You'll never feel all joy. That's not how it works. But your moments of joy will be greater than your moments of not joy, and that's the key right there. That little mathematical equation.
That, I mean, again, that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, I think it's one of the things that I don't know if you've heard about, but the sort of like therapy or like treatment I had to do, or like I've been advised to, and I ended up doing after I got diagnosed with the borderline personality disorder, was something called dialectual behavioral therapy. And
Mm,
one of the things there was actually this idea of, there are no bad and good emotions. Emotions are
yeah.
just emotions, and you got to, like, say, if you feel like sadness, accept the fact that you're sad and allow for the sadness to, say, like, allow for the sadness, sit with the sadness, and
Yes.
because then when you feel happy, accept that as well, and then also that almost makes you appreciate those, like, happy, joyful, again, when good things happen, you
Well,
appreciate those better.
for sure. And part of the book, part of what I teach in the book, part of what this strategy involves is you can't go from not joy to joy. You can't jump from being sad to being happy right away. You can't jump from being angry to being happy. It doesn't work. You have to hit neutral first. And so part of the strategy is identifying when you're in a not joy state, where you're sad or you're angry or you're embarrassed or you're upset for some reason. And you have to give yourself permission to feel that feeling. You have to let it go through you. You have to process it. You have to outlet it. If there's safe ways to punch a pillow or scream into some cold water. There's ways that you can get that out of your system and really process that negativity. And then once you're there processing it, you can hit back to a neutral place. And in the neutral place, you take a moment to just acknowledge the fact that you are no longer feeling anything at this point, and then you can start to do something that helps your joy strategy. Like there are different things that you can do. Everyone has them that bring them joy, and then that's where you begin to focus on those things, and that takes you from neutral to back to your happy place, as opposed to trying to get there straight from sadness, which will never work. And when you try to do that, you do yourself a disservice, because you're not processing those emotions, and those emotions are important. You're absolutely right. Even though sadness and embarrassment and anger and all those, it's important to process those emotions, or otherwise they're going to sit inside you and turn into cancer, or turn into upset stomach and negativity.
This is, oh my God, you're talking about the upset stomach, and I've suffered, and I used to be a very angry person,
Yeah.
and I suffer with, like, stomach issues, back problems, a lot of back problems, and now, in the last only few months, less than a year, since I started addressing the root, causes of, like, why I don't feel good, I guess, like, mentally,
Right.
I don't feel that bad anymore. Like, my back feels better. My stomach. I thought I went to the point where I thought I had some sort of, like, IBS. So, like, my doctor believed for that to be the case. In the last almost, like, 6, 7 months,
Nothing.
almost
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, because you're addressing the root cause. Those are symptoms of that root cause, and when you address that root cause, and you know what, we're men, so addressing our anger, addressing anything negative about ourselves is almost shameful in the male dominated world. And so to admit that you have a problem, or that you have a situation that needs addressing, is a sign of weakness to a lot of men. And so we are embarrassed as a group to admit these things. And so I think it's cool that we're beginning to have the courage to talk about this stuff and to admit it and go, dude, I need to see a therapist. Because I've seen a therapist before, and there's no shame in it, because it was a way to get some tools into my world, where like the most basic tool that my one therapist taught me was stop shoulding all over yourself. I kept saying the word should. I should do this, and I should do that, and I should do this, and I should do that. And she's like, no, you could do those things. Change your shoulds into coulds, and now it's a choice. And I just realized, and then I would catch myself saying should all the time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I should stop that. No, I could stop that. And if I do stop that, I'll probably feel better. And if I don't stop that, it's going to just be the same old, same old. And so I began to make those into choices, and it began to be a really healing thing for me. And that was just one of the many things that therapist taught me.
Did you start seeing? Did you see a therapist for the first time? Was it after 2002 or before?
No, way before. Yeah, it
Oh,
was
no
before I
way.
even discovered Buddhism. In fact, I told her, my therapist, how I longed to find like I was grew up Catholic, and the Christian religion no longer made sense to me. It never did, even as a kid. And so I was going from that to nothing, and I didn't like nothing. And I wasn't like a hardcore atheist that was trying to believe in no God or no big a bigger source of something. And Buddhism just answered all the questions I had. It didn't have any of the stuff I didn't like, the guilt trips. It didn't have the shoulds that the Christianity had, and instead it had this real journey of self where you have to really begin to see who you are in the world and what your choices are creating around you, and to begin to be responsible for that, and to begin um, to put better causes into the world, and to see the effects of that, and to talk about that, and to share that with people.
Hmm. That's that's really cool because again, going back to something that I mentioned earlier about like how I grew up in Romania and then moving to yeah, one of the things was when I moved to England, and this is something related to a previous point that when I grew up, when I came to England, I was very shocked because my idea of like the Western culture was very American. So then coming to
Yes,
England
England
and
is not America for sure.
exactly, I was just like, hey, this is weird. Like this feels
Interesting,
weird. But
but
now
probably
even
still different than Romania, though.
yeah, a lot
Yeah,
different. And then now the reason why I feel like those are intertwined, this thing with what I'm about to say next is that, then talking about like in Romania, growing up, there was no such thing as like mental health or kind of the
right.
acknowledgement. I don't even think it was the case of like whether being like a man or a woman. It was just the case of like,
We don't
it's
talk about
not,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't talk about that. It's kind of like, oh, you're just having a bad day. And I was like, I had bad I felt like I had bad days for the past 5 years,
I'm having a lot of bad days, my
Yeah.
friend. Yeah.
And this is when I was like, huh, this is weird. How do I? And I then also I feel like again I came yeah, again I was in England now, and I've started seeing therapists for the first time in 2020.
Oh, good.
I feel
Good.
like when the lockdown started in here, and
That was
because
rough on everyone.
and it was easy beforehand to kind of like hide from because you're like, oh, I'm feeling miserable, and it's kind of like, but I
Right.
need to go to see a friend. Like I promised someone that I'm gonna do this and that, or like I've got errands to run or whatever. But
Right.
now you're kind of just waking up with nothing to do,
Yeah,
with
and an
no
excuse
one.
to not do it with the COVID. Yeah, you could like, I'd help you, but I'm locked in my house. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be like, oh, I'm in a bubble, and technically, you can't be in
Yeah.
my bubble,
Sorry, my
so.
bad. Can't do
Yeah,
it.
and
Yeah.
that's when I kind of like broke down because there was nowhere to almost like hide, or like there was
Right.
nothing to think about first, because I'd kind of be like, oh yeah, I still. So my dad died like 5 years, no, 4 years, I think 4 or 5 years before COVID, before 2020, and I've never acknowledged that, like I never really dealt with it, but then literally as the pandemic started or like the lockdown started technically because I know the pandemic is what like December 2019 in March 2020 all these emotions came back,
Oh
and then I
man, you
was
had to deal
like,
with it.
yeah, and I was like, whoa, where is this coming from? Like this, like I
Right.
had a lot of guilt, a lot of sadness, about like losing
Right.
my dad and stuff
You
like. So I
never
was like, where?
processed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, what's happening? This is. And then I ended up. I think I called like I ended up calling like a Samaritans. Do you have that in America?
No. What's that?
It's like a suicide support thing, like
Oh yeah, they
you
have those
know,
hotlines. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
phone
So the
calls.
hotline for like suicide prevention or like yeah for support. And I ended up like speaking with someone there, and then I ended up speaking with again I got referred to speak with a different charity, which was like again with like therapist basically.
Right.
And then I spoke with those people, and then I eventually went to my GP, like my doctor, my everyday doctor, sort of thing. And I was like, "Oh, can I get a referral to see a therapist?" And then I started seeing a therapist. But it was quite funny
Great.
because
It
I
takes so
felt
long, doesn't it?
it does, but also my head, I was like, throughout all these steps, I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry to bother you." I,
Oh, here's that phone call. Here, 1 second.
sure,
Let me
sure,
just.
sure.
Sorry about that.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, and then the thing is, throughout this entire time, because it was the first time I kind of like spoke about whatever was going on in my head, I felt I had this tendency to like, even I think when I called the helpline, I was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry to disturb you. I don't really know who to talk to," and even with my therapist, I was kind of um,
It's funny, right?
ashamed of
Yeah.
going like, "Oh, I don't really. Can I tell you this?"
How
You know,
dare I
or
need help?
yeah, this sort of, and it's quite. Looking back at it, I'm like, whoa, this is interesting.
Yeah, but once you sought that help and got those tools from these people, don't you feel like you're more in charge anyways? Like you feel like you can take back control of your life.
It does, and because I think you mentioned before, like even the being like on the Asperger's spectrum. I actually feel like you know getting because I remember even when I got my BPD diagnosis, I was like, because I know some people. I heard this idea of, hey, I don't want to get like a diagnosis, like I don't want to um, kind of like get a label for it because
Yeah,
I want to feel in control. However, my idea is that ever since I got my diagnosis, I feel more in control because now it's like, oh, I understand why.
get it. Now it's not this big
Yeah.
confusing thing with no explanation. Because before, what happens is you think that everyone is like that in the world, but they're just dealing with it better. And you're like, well, why? How are you dealing with this better? And they're like, well, we're not feeling what you're feeling, dude. We're not. I mean, some people are, but most people aren't. And so with the Asperger's, and I've never been officially diagnosed with Asperger's. I just joke that I've been not officially diagnosed, but I've been accused of it multiple times by my wife. She recognizes it in me, and she knows that it's true about me. And I'm old enough now where I don't necessarily need a diagnosis to know that it's true, because I've done enough research on it to go, oh my God, this is totally who I am. And we notice and notify, we interject and correct, we offer unsolicited advice and directions. We're those people, right? We're like Karens. They call them Karens. We're that's not right. That's not. Let me tell you the truth. We don't always need to hear the truth, my friend. You need to shut up. And so, which is why now I put it in a book.
Nice. So if you want the truth, you gotta read. At least it feels like you've made the commitment to go through those pages. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it brought me to a happier place, and it got me to a place where I could do this book right here, which is it's a martial arts vigilante crime thriller. So it's my first take on a just a novel. It's a fictional novel, and it's fantastic. It's the hero is he's a mix between a Vietnamese and American. His father was a Vietnam War veteran who had this guy as a baby in Vietnam during the war, and he's learned how to spin kick, and that's what his big specialty is. And so he helps solve a crime that's happening, and there's a whole bunch of stories that come together into one plot. And at the end, and so it's if you ever know what like an airplane book is, where you go on a flight, and at the airport you buy one of those books, that a novel that's there, and you get
Yes.
through it by the time you land, you're on the last chapter, and you're like, oh, this book
Yes.
is great. This is one of those books. It's a combination of Jack Reacher and Kung Fu with David Carradine, so it's like that kind of a feel.
How did you get into it? Like, how did I, because by the way, for everyone who's not aware, because the name of the book is Spin Kick.
Yeah, the spin kick, the hiss of death.
The, how did you come up with it?
Well, it's based loosely on a true story. There's a comedian that was a criminal, like in this story, and so I used that as sort of the basis of how I wanted to start telling the story. And then I just wrote it. It just came out of me. It was a story that needed to be told, and I told it. And I it took me about 4 years to write it, because I wrote it first and then I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. And then I had an editor look at it, and then I rewrote it after the editor took a look at it. And so it's my baby. I just, it took a lot of effort to make this story come alive. And now it's been getting great reviews, and everyone who's read it has been really enjoying it. And so it's a real cool feeling, you know. So
when did it came out? When did it first
it just came out like 2 Fridays ago.
No way.
Yeah, so it's brand new. I just had a release party for it a couple Mondays ago, and we had about 60 people together there, and just sold a bunch of books, and we had a great time.
That's so cool. Was that in Dallas?
That was in Dallas, yeah.
Nice. That's amazing.
Right? It's fun.
Because you were talking about how when the economic crash happened, when the FM, again, like the radio,
Yeah.
as I even like grew up with, it changed, and it kind of like, again,
Yeah.
loads of people lost their jobs and these things happen. Is that because you said that around the time when you started writing?
No, that right then I was still doing stand up. What I did was I went and started going back to the clubs, and then I started doing cruise ships. Cruise ships became a profitable way for comedians to make a living, and so but you had to have a lot of material for that, which I did. And what happened was I had my baby daughter, and then I had my baby son. And then I had these 2 kids who were 3 years apart and who were growing up, and I would miss them. I would go on the road and I would be gone for a month, and I'd come home and I'd be like, "Hey kids, it's me, Daddy." And they'd be like, "Remind us?" I'm like, okay, fair enough. What does the word daddy mean? Does it mean guest? No, I live here. I help pay the bills. So I felt really guilty about that. So I quit comedy. I quit touring. And when I quit, I had to do something else to make a living. So that's when I started writing. So I got a job writing for a sports betting site, and I did stories on the NFL. And when they began to make it legal to bet on the NFL, so I that's how I made a living for quite a while, doing that. And before I started writing my books.
Okay, yeah, sorry, because that was it. My bad. Because I knew it was like something important happened when you had after you became a father, you went like, oh, I need to write because I can't go on the road.
I can't go on the road anymore. It was too sad.
Which is fair enough.
And now I'm at the age now where my kids are teenagers, and then they're like, "Dad, you need to get out of the house." So that's why I got back on the stage again.
But what was your first? What was the first book that you? I guess what was the first book that you decided to write? But then also, what was the first? Was it also the first book that you've actually published?
Yeah, the first book I published was called "Finding Your Funny Muscle: How to Create Laughs Like a Pro." In fact, let me grab a copy of it so you can see it. Although this is it's probably an audio podcast, so it doesn't really matter. Oh, well, I can't find it. Oh, here you go. No, these are all the old copy. Oh, here it is. Sorry.
That's okay.
But this is the book, Finding Your Funny Muscle: How to Create Laughs Like a Pro. And this is my bestseller, and it's hit on Amazon. And this book is pretty much for anyone who's trying to become funny for a living. It's a great book for that. And what it teaches you your, and that was published in 2023. And it was my first book. And what it teaches you, first of all, is your comedy lens, which is your brand. And so it teaches you how to find your own comedy lens, which helps you create humor that's more original and relatable and more organic. And then it teaches you how to use the humor blueprint, which is a sort of like a premise, setup, punchline formula that has a lot more involved. It shows you how to use misdirection in order to fool the audience into thinking that you're going to go in a normal direction. And then it shows you how to use the 36 humor heightening devices that allow you to find punchlines that surprise the audience and also satisfy the setup that you created. So this book has all that in it, and it's a fun read. It's a lot of fun, and it's it's another one of my babies. This one took me 10 years to write.
No way.
Yeah, I wrote another version of it, and I never could get it right, and then I finally got it right, and then in that same series, are two other books, which is fine tuning your
Fine-tuning your
funny
funny
muscle.
muscle.
Yeah, this is how to practice creating laughs like a pro, and then this is flexing your funny muscle, which is how and when to deliver laughs like a pro. So I always say with these three books, if being funny was like driving, this first book teaches you how to operate your car. The second book teaches you how to drive around town. And this third book teaches you when and when not to get in the car and drive.
That's funny. The third.
Right. So, yeah. So I've got all these books that I'm working on, and I'm just beginning to market them. And that's why I'm doing these podcasts, is just to try to get the word out and let people know that there's a new author in town, and he's got some really cool, fun stories. And then the final book I have is, I think I have it right here. This is called Frog Belly Beans. And Frog Belly Beans is a collection of short stories. These are twisted short stories that are just wild. And I published these under the name Max Gore, like Maximum Gore. So
Yeah.
they're kind of twisted. So that's a lot of fun. So those are all my books.
But then because they all, I mean, obviously the comedy ones, then this like the other Max Gore, but then even the Spinning Kick, they sound very different.
Yeah,
From
they're all coming from different places. Yeah, for sure.
how do you, like, is that how you I guess work? Is that, would you say that do you get all these ideas almost like at the same time, or is it the sort of like, for example, say, you get the idea of, I want to write this book about comedy, and then the next idea is, here's a book about martial arts, which is also like a crime thriller, and then, or
Right.
what are those intertwined? Are you writing multiple things at once? Or
Yeah,
do your okay?
I'm always writing multiple things, and I did a thing. I didn't go to school. I went to school for computers, but I didn't go to school for writing. So I wanted to do something to make myself at the level of somebody who graduated from college for writing. So I did what I call the 1,000,000-word challenge, and I challenged myself to write 1,000,000 words before I published anything, before I posted anything. So I wrote 1,000,000 words. It took me a year and almost 2 years, like a year and 3/4 to write. I did 2,000 words a day, and I did that until I got 1,000,000 words out. And so in that course of writing those 2,000 words a day came a lot of these short stories, came a lot of the books that I've written, and a lot of the blog posts that I did. And so they would be like the first draft is what I'd write when I was just writing those 2,000 words. And then I would pull a copy and paste that out, and I would rewrite it. And that's what writing is a lot about, is about rewriting. Anybody who writes knows that the first draft is usually a piece of crap. And then you have to just rewrite it over and over again until it does what you want it to do.
And because you were talking about how you've done computer science as a degree, but then were you always a creative? Like, were you a creative child, or
Yeah,
is that something that came out later?
I was always creative. I remember the first story I wrote was in grade school, and the teacher said, I want you to use this first sentence and create a short story for me. It's, you are what you eat. And so everybody was writing stories about health and like stories about eating good food and exercising and stuff. And so I wrote a story about a tomato, a kid who ate so many tomatoes that he turned into a tomato. And then by the end of the story, he got crushed into ketchup. And so, like, but that was still, you are what you eat, And so the teacher loved it, and she thought it was really creative. And so ever since then, I've been sort of dabbling in short stories, and a lot of the short stories I wrote in Chicago when I lived there. A lot of them I wrote while I was here in LA, and then when I was here in Dallas. And but most of that stuff came out of that million word challenge. It really pushed me to the edge. And during that time, I also read a lot of books on writing.
And is that why? Because you were talking about before you mentioned something with working on the as like a cruise ship comedian. It's good for people who have a lot of material.
Yeah,
Now, is that I imagine? I think you've already kind of like answered the question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is that how you come up with like such an abundance of material? Just because again you write so much and or do you actually like improvise a lot on stage? Because I know you actually mentioned that you are also doing improv comedy as well as stand-up
sure.
comedy.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all that. I do a lot of writing. I write a joke a day. That's my goal is to write a new joke every day. And some of them are good, some of them aren't so good. But at least I'm flexing that muscle every day. I also improvise a lot on stage. I love that when I'm getting a laugh to just yes and it, which means I agree with what I'm doing and then I heighten it, and that's a technique that you use as an improviser to create material out of nothing.
Hmm. Because and then look, because you've done. How do you get all the like? How did you have so much time? And like, how do you have even? I guess even before we talk about time, how did you have so much energy?
Well, I have a real hunger to get these words out. So that's where that comes from.
Right.
I have a real hunger to make people laugh. And so that's where that comes from, that desire. And you can't make people laugh from your living room. You got to go out and you got to find them and you got to, put an audience together. And then with the books, you'd be surprised how much you can do if you don't watch TV. I don't watch TV. I don't. I mean, I watch some Netflix and stuff like that, but only to watch some stories just to get inspired. But I just do a little bit every day, and when you do a little bit every day, it adds up. And people let their days slip by and often don't do the work that they're planning on. And then, 10 days slip by. And then that 10 days, if you would have just done an hour a day, that's 10 hours of work you could have had gone towards what you're doing. And people are amazed at like, well, how do you find the time to do all that? I'm like, you just do a little bit every day, little baby steps. It works. But then a lot of people have trouble doing a little bit every day. Like they'll do some for like 2 or 3 days and then they'll skip a whole bunch. And I don't skip.
And were you always like this, or did something change? What you again? Because you sound like you're very uh, not even motivated, but I want to say more like it's like like almost like the like maths. I forgot the word that's used. Where like you already have a vision and you already know like, oh, these are the steps and you just gotta do it.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that how you've always been?
That's how a computer mind works. When you build computer programs, you break it into steps and you break it into decisions and choices and loops and decision trees. And so that's the way my brain works. And so that's sort of how I work with this business of stand-up comedy. In fact, I forgot I do have one more book. I just this one. This is called The Business of Comedy. And this is 21 things every comedian should know about the business of stand-up comedy. And this is a book I'm giving away for free. I'm exchanging it for email addresses. But it's a really great book. It teaches you how to attract a following, teaches you how to get work for the first time. It teaches you how to learn the 5 tools of a stand-up comedian. What are the 5 tools that are important for you to learn how to master in order to do the job of being a stand-up. So I forgot I have.
When did you? No, that's okay. Well, when did you? Because what's the order then of the books? Like how do?
Well, this one I just did. This one was a talk I did. I teach comedy. I also teach comedy at the Dallas Comedy Club. And
Oh, I
so,
see.
yeah. And so I did a talk there called The Business of Comedy because a lot of comedians wanted to know, like, what is it? What I know how to make people laugh, but how do I get paid to do it? And so I gave this talk and people really enjoyed it. And I gave it to a bunch of different classes and they all liked it. So I just turned that into this book. So it took me a while to just sort of rewrite I
I
had a
see.
PowerPoint PowerPoint, and then so I took the PowerPoint and I turned it into this book. I mean, I didn't just copy and paste it. I had to rewrite it.
Of course.
Yeah, and so yeah, so I just had that idea because I want I'm and then I do a podcast. I also do a podcast. It's called the Funny Muscle Podcast, and we teach this stuff at our podcast, and we interview comedians, and we get them their inside scoop on how they write their material and how they create laughs like a pro.
And then are those the comedians? Are people that you've worked with, or people that you like? Are they from all over the world, or are they from Texas or from America?
Mostly from
What's the
America, but I interviewed Adam Bloom from London, from England.
yes, 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 yes.
He's a writer and also a comedian. We've interviewed mostly though people from America because that's the people I know. But I'm open to anyone who's from Europe that wants to be on the show. Hit me up, and I'd be happy to. If you're a good candidate as a guest, I would love to talk to you and pick your brain about how you create material.
No way, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's useful for these new comedians that are looking. A lot of people want to learn how to do this, and so we break it down for them.
What are your because you were talking about like how your kids are like teenagers now,
Right.
and yeah, what's are they also, do they have any like early signs of becoming comedians, or
Sure. My daughter's she's have you remember the movie Fame that was out a long time ago? I want to live forever.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and it was a high school that had all performance art. Well, she goes to the Dallas version of that high school called Booker T. Washington School for the Performing Arts. And so she's in a theater. She wants to do costume design and stage design. She's a really great artist. And then my son is a computer programmer. He likes to do. He's only 13 and he programs computers already. He creates games. And so,
No way.
yeah, he's into that, and he's got friends all over the world. He's up all night talking to his friends in Asia and in Europe.
That's really cool.
Isn't that great? So yeah, they're definitely both really creative. Although my son,
sorry, go on.
like, Dad, I just found out you were on the Tonight Show. Why didn't you ever tell us? And I was like, well, I figured you'd find out someday. So he was impressed by that.
That's amazing. Because then, did you change a lot as like the way you do stand-up comedy? I guess like your stage persona or like the things that you say. Have you changed a lot from when you started, or do you actually see the same? So if you were to watch a video or like hear a tape of yourself from when you started to now, besides of obviously the experience that comes into it, but I'm talking about more like the personality, the is that changed much?
What hasn't changed is there's a remarkable silliness to what I do, and I like to bring life to things that don't normally come alive. Like I like to make inanimate objects have a voice and have an attitude. I like to give voices to animals. I like to hear the point of view of somebody that's not really part of the story. Like if there's a fight on a date, I'd like to hear what the waiter has to say. So that kind of stuff. So that's never changed. My take on all of it has a little bit. My comedy lens has evolved. Now I call myself the clumsy Aspie hole, and that's a person who's an Asperger's is an Aspie, and a person who's unaware that they're Asperger's is kind of an asshole. So I call them an Aspie hole, and I'm clumsy because it always backfires on me. So I call myself the clumsy Aspie hole. And that's sort of the lens that I see my humor in right now. And that's kind of new. And when I was doing comedy, when I was a younger man, I was single, I had no kids, and now I have a wife and I have 2 kids. So my life is different. I used to drink and do drugs. Now I don't drink and do drugs. And so I have a lot of different takes on the world now. I'm just a boring old man.
Look, it doesn't sound like you're boring at all. It like the amount of times like I had like is that a jaw drop? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
When I was listening to it, I was like, oh my God, this is really cool.
Oh, good, man. Well, I appreciate that.
That's again, you got like a lot of cool things to say. That's That's amazing. But then one, okay, two more questions. That's okay
Yeah,
for
yeah, for
doing.
sure.
One question, well, the question was, oh my God, I forgot what the question was.
That's all right.
Because one second, let me.
Yeah, take your time.
Oh yeah, what was it like to, I guess, again, look, to restart, like doing stand up, like going out again. Have
Yeah.
you, noticed much of a, I guess, even of a change in, even like, I guess, actually throughout the entire time you've done stand up comedy, have you noticed any changes at all in regards to like the even the audiences, or like the way, the stand up shows are run, or things like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been a constant evolution, and I think it's getting better and better. I think right now we're in a real incline in the popularity of stand up comedy. I think um, we're experimenting a lot with dirty material. We're experimenting a lot with crowd work. We're experimenting a lot with spontaneous comedy, and so that's a good thing, I think. But truly, the art form of stand-up comedy is just a one person speaking and telling jokes where we misdirect the audience into thinking we're going to say something normal, and then we say something weird, and it still satisfies that setup. And we do that over and over and over and over again, and we do it the night after night, and we use the same material, but it sounds like it's the first time we've ever done it. And that's the true art form of stand-up comedy. Telling jokes and making drunk strangers laugh. That's it. And it had, that part has never really changed. But now with a lot of crowd work going on social media, people think that they have to be part of the show. So audiences are talking back to the comedians, and that's not a good thing. We don't need your help. We're like, speak when you're spoken to, but don't not until then. And the reason why people put a lot of crowd work online is because they don't want to burn their material. If I put my material online, then everyone's heard the joke already, so I can't surprise you with it. So that's why we do crowd work online. And so but for me personally, I was off for 10 years, and then I didn't do any stand up at all for 10 whole years. I didn't think I was going to do it at all again. I thought I was really retired. And then I just got the bug again. And when I got back on stage, it was really frightening. I was really rusty. I'm still a little rusty. I say it's like being, when you put a treadmill on really fast and then you jump
Yeah,
off of it and then you try to jump back on it and you're like,
and yeah.
Jesus Christ, oh my God. I feel like that's what me jumping back on the comedy treadmill was like. And I was just like, I forgot how fast we move. It's a real fast thing, at the top level. And so right now it's just been an adjustment getting back to the, to that speed. So that's why I'm on stage now and trying to get that back. Now the audiences, they're a little bit more woke now, so that they're in a good way. I think you can't punch down like you could before, and I don't think you should punch down for your humor. I think you should punch sideways or you should punch up. But punching down is just picking on people who are already down, and so it's like low hanging fruit. But I like punching sideways and punching up. That's the best way to do it. And I'm an old white guy, so it's hard to punch sideways. There's not a lot of room on the side for punching, because in like the majority of guy, I'm not a special interest. And when you're when you're a certain race or a certain sex or a certain creed, you can begin to punch sideways in a way that I can't. And I'm not mad about that, because white men have had quite the advantage for quite a while. But right now we're sort of at a disadvantage because, I mean, jokingly, sarcastically, because everybody wants to hear what people who look different have to say, because for so long we have oppressed what they've had to say. So I get that. That's not a problem for me.
And then I guess, on the other hand, because actually I feel like I had this bit where I was doing once a show, and it just happened that I think I was the third or the fourth comedian, and there were like three other like white comics before me, all with like beautiful like English accents. And I
Right.
remember when I went on stage, this lady in the front row, she just like rolled her eyes
Oh boy.
until I started speaking, in which when and then she went on like, "Oh, you don't sound like you're from here." And
Oh,
that was what actually got me into,
so did she think
you
you were
know,
just another white guy?
yeah, I
That's
think,
funny,
because
man.
it was, yeah, because she was like,
How's it
"Oh
feel, man?
God."
It sucks, doesn't it? You're like, no,
But
no,
it
no. I
was,
swear, I'm not from Whiteville.
yeah. But then you see, this is the funny thing is that I thought, but then you see, again, in one hand, I feel like that's not fair because if someone's funny, it's funny. That's it.
Right.
But then I guess to use it on the I guess to look on the again even like on a more positive side, it's I feel like it requires to really, like you said, you really work out the funny muscle,
Yeah.
where you're kind of like, again, look, like now, again, there are limited things that you can say. So it's almost like the goal is to use those and still entertain,
Well,
right?
I don't know that I would say there's a limited things to say. I think we can say anything about anything. I think that's the great thing about comedians, but it's the way you say it. If you're punching sideways or up, you can say anything you want about anything because we want to laugh at the people who are in charge. That's sort of what we're trying to laugh at. The original job of the jester was to crack up the court about about the king's news and without getting killed, and that was the job of the jester, and that's sort of still our job, in a way. And so I think that it's a mistake to think that we should not talk about certain things, but I think it's a mistake to think that you can talk about anything you want any way you want and not be responsible for how you're doing that. I think we need to be more responsible for how we're doing that, and I think that's what you're talking about a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Because I was going to say it's not the case of like, oh, you can't say this. Is more of a,
Right.
oh, it's whatever. Say like you have something to say which has been said before, perhaps. So then, what's your take on it? Like, or how do
Exactly.
you make it? Because it's something that you said earlier, which actually makes me very excited about perhaps writing a bit tonight before I go to sleep. When you were talking about how it's all about misleading the audience when they think, oh, you're
Yeah.
going this way, but then you're going the other.
Yeah, and that's the fun of it. That's the trick, and that's what the audience loves. They love being fooled like that, and they love that when the punchline makes sense to how that was set up, and they go, "Oh, I get it. I get what you did to me. I get that you told me it was going to go this way, but it really went that way, and I get that it still makes sense."
You see, it's stuff like this, which I feel like it makes me. I sometimes I feel very, very grateful to have found stand-up comedy because,
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like I always thought, it sounds silly because you have to find what you love and just do it, and I'm like, I don't know if that's true, and I'm like, yeah,
it is
it's
true.
true.
Yeah, I geek out on this stuff. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world, and it's it's why I coach people one on one. I coach people and my website's funnymuscle.com and mike-lucas.com. You can find information on how to get coaching if that's something that's interests you. But I think that the journey of a comedian is really self-motivated. But I think that you can also get help from people who have already been there and done that. So there's a shortcuts you can take, you know, by getting coached by somebody or by taking a class and doing a showcase in front of a group of people.
Well, look, that I agree, and I feel like this is. I really appreciate you for taking the time to speak with
Absolutely.
me. Now, the last question was, again, which you kind of like answered, but I will ask one more time so we get it all together.
Sure.
Is Yeah, where do people find you? Where are you most active? Or again, websites, anything that you've got. Also, if there is anything that we got to look out for, bear in mind this comes around, I'd say, the middle to end of April.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, anything you want to find out about me, Mike Lukas, it's my last name spelled Lukas. So it's a little bit unique. It's a Lithuanian heritage, so that's why we get the K from. And so, right, go Eastern Bloc. And so,
Nice.
if you want to find my books on humor, you go to funnymuscle.com, and I have a whole site set up there. And also, you can find my CD that I have. You can get that, listen to it for free. And you can also get all my blogs and stuff like that. And then also, you go to mike-lukas.com. That's Lukas, mike-lukas.com. And that's where I have all my other books stashed. And you can get any of those at Amazon or Barnes and Noble. So buy books and do us a favor as authors. Could you please write a review? If you enjoy a book, take a minute and just write a review and give it 5 stars and just help us tame the algorithm and get other people to read these books.
Nice. I'll keep that in mind as well for when I do
When
when
you
I
buy
make
all
my
7 of my books.
so I'm actually I was gonna tell you after we record. I'm actually very interested. That I want to check out your the comedy ones for sure.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
quite curious
absolutely.
about that. But
Yeah,
hey,
and
look,
I offer people, if you buy my books and you need help, just contact me at mike@funnymuscle.com, and I'll help you find your comedy lens. And I'll help you, whatever questions you have about the books, I'm happy to answer. And as long as you're polite, I'll be very happy to talk comedy with you. Like I said,
no
I geek over
way.
this stuff. Yeah, for sure. So happy
That's
to let anybody
beautiful.
do that. Yeah.
Look, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Levy. Thanks, man.
Take care. Bye bye.
See you.
Well, what do you think? Did you enjoy? Was it good? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? Um, Honestly, I think listening back to the bits as like I'm putting the thing together just made me realize how uh, privileged I am to have the opportunity to speak with these amazing people and record it and they share it with everyone that wants to listen to it. So that's a big thank you to everyone listening, and a huge thanks to Mike. Um, yeah, and for the guests that have been in the podcast and the guests that you will hear from in the next couple of weeks and then months ahead. And look, I think, yeah, thank you. And that's pretty much it from me. And as usual, from me, Pickle and Sarma, until next week, stay skillful. Bye.